The grooming gang scandal is the greatest scandal of the 21st century, and Labour is at the heart of it. The Labour Party has been engaged in the most disgusting act of corruption and cover-up in any of our lifetimes. This is something which you would hope would have been exposed by a national inquiry, but the Labour Party is doing everything to stop that national inquiry from happening. Hello, I'm Rafe, Heydel-Mankoo, and I want us to take a really deep dive into examining precisely how the Labour Party has its hands stained with the rape gang saga. This is a story not enough people know about. The involvement of Labour, how Labour politicians were complicit in the industrial-scale rape of young girls in this country, the cover-up that is the most shameful episode of the 21st century. And they didn't do it for multiculturalism, they didn't do it for community cohesion, they did it for their base own self-interest. They did it to secure Muslim votes. Let's be clear about that and what's happened. Now, this national inquiry into the rape gangs, which Starmer was pressed into, shamed into doing because of Elon Musk, it's been 4 months since he announced that national inquiry, and nothing has happened. It has stalled. They can't even find someone to lead it. Nobody seems to want to dirty themselves by association with such a mucky subject. Anyone who's touted for it soon says they're not going to be involved. They haven't even described or decided on the remit of the inquiry, what's going to be looked at. And it only serves to suggest to people that the Labour Party is trying to kick this into the long grass because they know that the inquiry is going to lift a rock on what happened in the north of England. And under that rock will be all sorts of slime and sleaze related to how the Labour Party knew what was going on and had a deal with Muslim leaders saying, we will turn a blind eye to all this if we can count on your support and count on your votes. That's what really happened. And what we've just had yesterday is a third survivor of the rape gangs, a lady who, along with 2 other ladies, were actually sitting on the panel of this national inquiry. All 3 of them have now resigned. And here we have the article from the BBC. Now, these victims bravely came forward in order to play their role in trying to expose precisely what happened to them so that we can learn lessons. And 3 of them have resigned, saying that the process felt like a cover-up and had created a toxic environment for survivors. And she felt the process was scripted and predetermined. The sense of control and stage management left many of us questioning whether our voices truly matter or whether actually they were pawns. They were just being invited on there so that the Labour Party could say that this was a legitimate inquiry. And there's frustration about the length of time because they do think it's because the Labour Party is scared of what could be exposed. Now, what we know, of course, is that the Labour Party originally wanted to have 5 smaller sets of inquiries run by the very councils who were at the heart of the scandal. They wanted Oldham and Rochdale and others to mark their own homework, talk about putting the fox in charge of the chicken coop. But when she's questioned about this, she becomes very defensive. And just look at this mad outburst from her yesterday, and the scene of frustration on Jess Phillips' face suggests perhaps that the lady doth protest too much.
The conversation with Oldham is, do we not think it might be better for them just to take part in a statutory inquiry? That it is absolutely nothing to do with the idea that Oldham is telling me what to do. And the more people from that side, he can hold up his paper and have a smug face all he likes, but the fact of the matter is that there is absolutely no council in this country who will tell this inquiry where it can and cannot go. I have said that 1 million times from this dispatch box, and yet the same thing gets
1 million times from this dispatch box. There's a reason that the councils don't need to tell the Labour Party where to go and where not to go, because the Labour Party already knows that and doesn't want to go anywhere close to it. There's another reason why Jess Phillips, the Minister for Safeguarding Women, is so reluctant to shine a spotlight on the dark underbelly of sexual aggression, misogyny, and violence that exists within certain elements of the Muslim community, particularly in segregated communities. If you look at her last election result, her majority was only 693, as you can see here on the screen. So there are barely 700 votes keeping her in office. She knows that she depends upon the Muslim vote to stay in office. And so while she'll be very quick to call out any white man who may, for example, say something on the street to a pretty lady, she will never attack or condemn the virulent misogyny, the polygamy, the cousin marriage, the child marriage that exists within the Islamic community. I think is an absolutely outrageous dereliction of duty from the Minister of Safeguarding. Now, I made some very strong allegations against the Labour Party in the north of England. I want to tell you what actually happened in the north of England. Originally, you had white Labour MPs in the north of England who told the Muslim community, look, we will look after you, give us your vote and we'll look after you. After a while, Muslims began to, and Asians in general, began to think, well, we don't need white MPs to do this. We can have our own people become MPs for the Labour Party. And that's what happened at the next stage. They became MPs. Then after a while, you began to get Muslims saying, well, actually, we don't need to have the Labour Party at all. Why don't we have our own independent MPs in Parliament? And that's the next stage which we're seeing is the rise of this Muslim vote. And that's scared the Labour Party hugely. The Labour Party is very worried about losing this vitally important demographic. Remember, one of the reasons the Labour Party under Tony Blair wanted mass immigration was to flood the nations with ethnic minorities, knowing that at that time, 80% of ethnic minorities voted for the Labour Party. So by importing this new demographic, you would guarantee majorities for the Labour government. And so to try to hold on to that Muslim vote, so scared were they of losing it, the Labour Party in the north of England and perhaps elsewhere did a deal. And they said, we will turn a blind eye to the abhorrent cultural practices that are going on within some of your communities. We won't focus on that. We'll protect you. Even more importantly, we are the government. These independent Muslim MPs, they will never get into government. They can't do anything to change the law. We will put in an Islamophobia law for you. That's us looking after you. Don't vote for the Muslim vote MPs, vote for us. And so what we saw was absolutely, in every sense of the word, corruption of the highest order. It got to the point where Muslim community leaders, quite often with heavy men with them, would go door to door to households and tell the senior person in the household to give them all of that house's postal votes, just to sign them, and then those blank postal votes in vast tranches were allegedly given to the Labour Party. And so you had corruption of an immense sort, criminal conduction, I would say, some might say, the sort of thing we associate with the 19th century rotten boroughs that were done away with the 1832 Reform Act, alive and well in 21st century Britain. We were told all of this by a man called Roger Meir, a very brave whistleblower. He appeared on our show on the New Culture Forum with Peter Whittle, and here's an excerpt from his excellent interview with Peter. Just have a listen to this.
This isn't about maintaining community relations. This isn't even about ignoring the needs of working class white males and thinking, they made lifestyle choices and all the horrible things that they used to describe. This was a calculated exchange. And that calculated exchange was looking the other way. And in return for looking the other way, those who control the votes in that community continue to provide the votes in that community to the Labour Party. 100%. How did it work then on a practical level? Okay, so there was a guy in Rochdale, the most infamous of the grooming gang leaders was a man called Shabir Ahmed. He was known as Daddy. He's due out of prison, I think, next year, but he served 22 years in prison. At a local level, Daddy was employed by the council. And seconded to the Pakistani Community Centre. Of course, the Pakistani Community Centre then made sure that the votes went en masse to whoever the Labour candidate was.
Was this done through postal vote?
Postal vote. So Tony Blair had introduced postal voting for anyone, yeah? And very quickly people worked out all you needed was a signed postal vote. The X left empty. and you'd harvest them, you'd collect them. So you'd collect them via the community centres, you'd collect them via the mosque, you'd collect them via the informal networks that these men operated through. Because organised crime moved in there, same sort of network of heroin dealers moved into this area. They now have that, they've got their own way of doing this, and they can also knock on your door and remind you that you're not registered to postal vote. And would you like to register to postal vote? What are you going to do when someone like that knocks on your door? You're going to sign the form and hand it over, because it's not worth the hassle.
Now, just listen, think about what you just heard there. That is the politics of the third world, the politics of Pakistan being imported to the United Kingdom. Gross corruption, criminality. And no one is talking about it. You get vague references in the mainstream media, the BBC, that the Labour Party is scared of what the inquiry might uncover, but they don't call out what they actually will uncover, the systematic attempt to overturn British democracy in constituencies. This will be even more important, I would suggest, at the next election, where, of course, reform is nipping at the heels of the Labour Party. How many of those seats, perhaps, would go blue if it were not for postal votes? But what amazes me, of course, is that the Tory party should have known all of this. They were in power for 14 years. They would escape from this inquiry relatively scot-free, because the areas we're talking about are almost exclusively, perhaps exclusively, Labour strongholds. So it was in the Tory party's interest to call this out, to expose this, and to have a national inquiry. And the fact that they didn't, again, I suppose, for fear, but for being petrified by political correctness and generally not wanting to be seen as racist or whatever, that they didn't. But whatever the reason is, it's a scandal. But we do now finally have a national inquiry. Unfortunately, it's under a Labour government, and we are being betrayed again, and those girls are being betrayed again. Even as we see here, we've just had yesterday, one of the people on this grooming gang inquiry, appointed by the Labour Party, has previously told people to stop blaming brown men for the scandal. This woman, Sabah Kaiser, says that it was wrong to focus on the rape of predominantly by men of Pakistani heritage against white girls. I mean, what sort of faith would you have in an inquiry like that? And of course, the corruption of Labour seems to just emanate from all sides now. We've always wondered, why is London not also reporting stories of the grooming gangs? Remember, London is larger than Birmingham, Manchester and Leeds combined. It's larger than Scotland and Wales combined. We've had no stories here. I posited that perhaps there are very few white girls left in London to rape. I mean, that's the reality. If you go to Tower London and East London, you won't really find any young white girls in Muslim communities. Could that be a reason for it? Well, no. Apparently, it has been going on. And despite claiming ignorance of the subject, Sadiq Khan also knew it happened. We've had reports that, of course, he was aware of documents relating to several of these rape gangs for a long time and what they did in London hotels. The Evening Standard has been shining a spotlight on this. Here we have an article, Standard exclusive, on London's grooming gang shame, police failure, institutional cover-up, establishment silence. And it goes into details here of who knows what and where. And I'm afraid to say Sadiq Khan was fully aware of what was going on. And yet, when he was questioned on this recently by Susan Hall in the London Assembly, this arrogant man, this condescending man had the audacity to pretend that he didn't know what grooming gangs were. Just listen to this.
Just how many grooming gangs have we got in London?
The way I'm misunderstanding, can she define what she means by that?
Yes. If you look at what's gone on in Rotherham, where there are people taking young girls, grooming them for sex, that is what I'm talking about.
We know in London there are issues about exploitation of young people, but they're not as defined by the member in her definition of what those types of gangs are.
So are you saying we haven't got the same sort of gangs that are in Rotherham, Bradford and lots of other places in the country?
For your understanding, what does she mean by that?
You know full well what I mean by that. It's all over the television. You know exactly what I mean by that. These gangs are people that are grooming young girls for sex. Do we actually have those in London?
I'm unfair to what is meant by the question. If she could spell it out, I can answer.
How repugnant. Can you imagine? We all know what she's talking about. You can't escape this news. He hasn't been living with his head in the sand. And his attempt to turn this into political point scoring by trying to portray her as somehow racist or Islamophobic, rather than actually standing up for the victims he knew about. Again, why isn't he being called out about this more? I'm glad that the Standard has this report into it. Ladies and gentlemen, I put it to you, this is the greatest scandal Britain has had in the 21st century, maybe even perhaps in the last century. The industrial scale rape of young girls was bad enough, but the complicity of the Labour Party, of the police, of the social services, of the councils, they were all in it up to their necks. It's a disgusting situation. Heads must roll. You know, in more honourable and decent days, the Labour Party would resign from government. I'm Rafe Heydel-Mankoo.
Hello. Please excuse this brief interruption, but I'd be really grateful if you could please hit the subscribe button and subscribe to our channel. Our mission is vitally important, and we must grow this channel to ensure that our content reaches the biggest possible audience. The best way to do this is for you to subscribe. It's totally free. And in addition to subscribing, if you're able to donate or join our membership scheme, please click on the link in the description or visit our website, newcultureforum.org.uk. We've got great plans ahead, but we can't do it without your support. From only £4 per month, you'll receive a range of perks and benefits, including exclusive content. Thank you.